Okay, let's get started. We're going to do our sea turtle today, which is this image here. And what we're going to be doing is what I'm looking to have you think about is that nothing here is white. Even though we see these lighter markings, nothing is white. And I want that feeling of the turtle in the water. So that's going to be a lot of the conversation today. So you should have your spray bottles. You should have some masking fluid, some little gizmo to put it on. I use a little toothpick here. And I have some natural sponges because I want to give the feeling of the bottom of the water there, the bottom of the sea. Bottom of the sea. Let's start with, not what you might expect. I'm going to use a large brush. And this is my silver black velvet number 20. And what I'm going to do is, let me go in a little closer, and I'm going to take my blue. I'm going to start with, let me bring this in a little bit. I'll see this here also with this. You can't see the colors I'm using. I'm going to start with a turquoise. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come around and I'm going to sort of want to save the top of the turtle's back. So that's his back. It's not perfect. So make it a little bumpy and a little irregular. Okay. And that's really what I want to have happen, is that sort of is the light coming from the top of the surface hitting the upper part of the turtle. That's his little wing, whatever they are. And now, as I'm bringing this down, it's sort of just fading off. And I want you to fade this into your drawing. I only want to save the very top. And the bottom part, I would like for you to make sure you add color to. Don't ignore your drawing and just go straight into it. So let me go a little darker here and I'll show you what I mean. And by the way, I'm going to be using a lot of different colors today. So I have cerulean. That was a cobalt blue that I used. There's some cerulean. I'm going to use some, maybe that's a little, my phthalo turquoise, phthalo blue. Use a lot of different blues here because it just will make it that much more interesting. If you have it, use some cobalt. If you have it, use some,
Nan,
yes.
you're in the lower right-hand corner. I can't see that at all. Can you move the paper?
Well, that's why I'm going to have to come out to do that, guys. Okay, that's just the only way, because the cameras are either close up or they're not.
Okay, we can still see enough.
Yeah, I think so. You know, I'm just adding color, and I'm adding a lot of different blues is what I'm doing. Okay, Rita?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay. And I'm ignoring the part of my drawing that is on the bottom. I'm only holding on to the uppermost portion of the turtle. And I'm letting it move in the water. This is why I think like painting water this way. And I'm going to get blossoms, and I'm going to get some movement. I'm going to get some great things going on, because why? We're just allowing it to happen. Okay. We're just allowing the colors to happen, and they're exploding, and we could splatter a little bit and, you know, have some fun with that kind of explosion, because it's wet into wet right now. All right, and again, ignore your drawing and have some of these colors go right into your turtle, because it will, I'm saving the wing on this other side. This is the wing that's on the lower left corner, and I'm just ignoring every part of my drawing except for that. And I'm releasing the color that I want it to be the most intense. On the top, it's as if the light is hitting the top of his flipper, whatever they are. And you'll notice even my splatters have sort of dissipated because why? I'm working very wet into wet right now, which is why I wanted you to have a dryer kind of ready to go. Ignore your drawing on the bottom part of the flipper here and let that color just come in. Let that blue come in, because what it's going to do is we're going to build those elements in a bit. But what I want to have happen right now is I would like for it to appear as if those pieces of him is coming underwater. So we're going to build this, but right now I just want you to have a really nice wet feel for all of this bottom part and all around him, all that water. And you'll notice if you drop color in, like I'm on the top of his head, that's a little phthalo turquoise. I mean, I think that's going to be a pretty central part of the painting. So I'm sort of thinking of like a little bit of contrast right there, and I'm going to let it flow out. So this is probably not what you expected when you thought we were going to be painting this, but this is a great way to engage the turtle being into the water itself. Got some nice blossoms. And along the bottom, I know it's a little greener. I kind of want to add some greens and yellows into him right now. So I really want it to be, this is like a green gold kind of color. And I'm not really worried about if it's going into the water or not. None of that really matters. If it's soft, that's okay. Because what we're going to do is, of course, allow all these pieces to be built afterwards. And so if you look, he kind of has this yellow kind of greeny color on him. Use any yellow, any green that you have. I don't think anything that you have is going to be wrong. And I'm just giving this is just an initial wash. And this is also why I wanted to have you have a hair dryer ready to go. And if the green goes into the blue water, all the better. Just really loose. And this is a great way to avoid thinking, oh, I have to make everything so perfect in the moment. You really don't. This is really going to be just great. And this lower area here kind of has a rock there. And so I'm going to add some colors in there. I'm going to go a little deeper with my green. And now I'm going for, I just went into my cascade. So I'm going to add a little cascade green in here just to sort of start the conversation of some rock formation, or I don't know, some kind of coral, whatever it may be, I don't know. Okay, that kind of is having that. We're going to build that because we're going to be putting, of course, that we're going to be using our texture on our soap, sponge for that. And so in here, you could just drop in more color. So I'm just going to tap some color in here because it's so wet into wet. It's going to be really, really very blossomy. Tilt your paper if you want to sort of direct it in a certain way, kind of like what happened here. I'm really not worried about any blossoms, any color going into any color. I did hold on to a little bit of a white edge on the top, which is where the light to me is going to be hitting the top of the turtle. And just so that you know, I'm using my 300 today because I knew I was going to be using a lot of water. And if your paper is buckling, you might be able to tape it down or something. Let me go in a little closer and show you what's going on. It looks like a whole lot of stuff is going on, and a whole lot of things are going on. And where it's wet, I can still continue to drop in some more color. If it dried, you can simply take your spray bottle and just spray it so it has a place to move. rather than if you touch it with your brush, it's sort of going to affect things. So you don't want to really do that. So your spray bottle is a great way to do that. And it'll give you some really beautiful, unexpected results as well. I'm on the bottom of the flipper where maybe that coral rock kind of is. Now this is starting to dry here. So what I'm going to do, and you could do this, of course, at your own pace. I'm going to take my sponge and I'm just going to indicate some little bit of texture, just because I don't want it to be so soft there. I sort of want a little bit of texture there. And of course, the danger of...
Jen, we can't see where your sponge
Oh,
is.
sorry, let me back up. Thank you, Janine. Let me back up. So I'm just down here and I'm just taking my sponge and I'm just tapping it a little bit. It's still wet, but where it might have started to dry, like mine started to dry down there a little bit, you can just take your sponge and go in and add some colors. That was a little bit of my Cascade. This is a little bit of my green gold.
Oh, that camera works fine if you want to stay with it.
Okay, thank you. I don't know why it looked a little yellow. Maybe it just needed a little color to get it talking. I don't know.
Warm up. Maybe it needed warm up.
I don't know. I'm going to check it out though, Janine. I'm going to find out what's going on with that. Now we have a lot of blue and we have a lot of green. Let's talk about, and the blues are sort of on the warmer side. They're really not cool blues. I'm just letting this sort of travel up a little bit so it's not in that corner as much. I'm going to take another piece of my coral, my sponge, and I'm going to go into maybe a little bit of orange. And the reason why I want to go into orange is because the orange is a great complementary color to our blues and greens. And coral can be sort of that color. So it's very wet right here. I'm going to go in a little closer. Let me switch cameras and go in a little closer. So I'm right down here in that lower right corner. And I'm simply going in with a little bit of orange. Any orange that you have is really okay. And I'm just sort of introducing a complementary color. Do I see it in the painting, in the photo? The answer is no, I don't. But I know, and you guys know, that a good complement really does help the painting to move forward. So just dropping it in and giving that suggestion of the bottom of the ocean, wherever he's swimming, and giving it a little bit of color. You could even take your brush or even a toothbrush and splatter some color in too. In fact, that's a really good idea. I'm going to do that. Good idea to always have all your supplies ready to go because you never really know. And I don't really know what I'm going to use. And that's the truth. I work very, very intuitively, very much in the moment. I see what's happening in the moment and I react to that. And I just say, what does this painting sort of call to me? What does it sort of say it needs or would like? And so, of course, it's so much timing. Even if you just take water and just splatter some water, it's going to push the paint away and give you some really nice effects. So whether you have color or just water on your toothbrush, either way, you're going to get something really fun going on. And if it goes into your turtle, that's just terrible. Just tilting it, watching it go a little bit. Let me back it out. And that looks interesting to me. And I think it's just a good first start. And it's got a lot to dry. But see, what I'm really doing also, guys, is I am keeping you maybe down here while up here is drying, because everything's sort of timing. So while this is drying, work in your lower right corner, because before we add our masking fluid to our turtle, we want it to be dry. That's why you're going to need your dryer today. So, and I am going to add a little bit of color because there is some warmth in that turtle in his back. So what do you say we just add a little bit of orange in there? Just so it's not just one color. Now's a great time to do it because once we mask it, that will be the color that's sort of underneath. Use your spray bottle if you don't want to disturb what's there. You could use your dot sprayer or your other sprayer, whichever. And everything else we can build. Which camera am I on? Okay, I'm on the big camera. So probably very different than the way you thought we were going to start, which, you know, is always my goal, is to have that experience be not maybe what you might thought we were going to do. And the only hard edges I really have is where the blue, and I'm letting a little bit of that white, and certainly you don't need to do that, but I just have a little bit on this upper flipper here, a little bit on his head, and on his back. Those are the only places I have white. Everything else is pretty well soaking wet right now. I got a little indication of some texture down here. It's just the start of that. And okay, so I just used the hair dryer here to sort of start giving ourselves a nice dry area to work. This is really very, very loose. But what I want to do is, particularly on his flippers and a little on his head, is I want to protect the color that's underneath, and I don't want to be doing little otchky-potchky sections. So what I'm going to do is use my masking fluid. This is one of those tooth gum things or whatever. And I'm just going to put it on in between these little sections to protect that nice color that we have, that we put on underneath. So you could draw the pattern in between. Everybody see what I'm doing? Let me go up close for you. So I'm putting the masking fluid just in between to sort of preserve that light color. And then we'll be able to add a glaze, a darker glaze, and we will not be as fussy with all of those marks. So that's why I thought to do it this way, because I really don't want it to be overly like little piecemeal that you're doing. And as I get further down his flipper here, what I'm going to do is make it a little less defined, because I do want it to melt. This is how we're going to melt it into the water. So as it comes down, while I do see that it of course is sharp in the photograph, we want to interpret the photo. And so what I'm doing is I'm coming down, I'm just giving it a little bit of a suggestion in these shapes. And you'll see we'll just sort of use a scumble technique to create that. So it's a little less defined as I come down here. And I do like this masking fluid, this PBO drawing gum, which is just really liquid rubber cement, because I like the color of it. It's like a light grayish blue color. And sometimes those other ones that are bright orange are just a little too garish for me, and they throw my painting off. And what's great about working this way is that you can almost see your shapes, like good shapes, evolving, because it almost, well, I'm painting with this little gum thing here. And so you want these marks to be really nice little marks. So I am taking my time. I'm not over globbing, which you could easily do with this stuff. And I'm just taking my time and going in and finding these great little shapes that are going on. And think of them as painterly marks. I don't really think people think about our rubber cement, our masking fluid in that term. But I do like the idea of thinking of it that way because it helps us to, when we remove it, we don't have just globby pieces of whites or lights. They really are quite beautiful. And so I like for you to think about that. Now this is dry enough for me to go over here. So I'll just move this up a little bit. And you could see I have some nice kind of, you know, good shapes going on here, which is exactly what I want. So you could come down on the side of the pick or brush and give it, instead of it making it all even Steven, you really want it to look a little different each time, not exactly perfectly same shape, same size, same width. Oh, hello, got some glove going on there. Okay, well, we got some things going on here that they didn't expect. So I got a big glob here. I'm not going to worry about it right now because I'm just going to use it. So what happened was my gum, my drawing gum got a little bit, masking fluid got a little thick. It got a little spot and it pulled out a whole big clump. I'm not going to worry about it. You know, I'm not, because so what, he's got some dots going on. I don't think that's a big deal. And really all you have to do is wait till it dries and lift it off if it really bothers you. So again, I'm sticking to the details on the top of his body. This will help us to immerse him in the water as if he's, because I've seen these paintings where they're sort of just there and they're floating and they don't look immersed. And I want him to feel immersed in the water. So that's sort of why I'm going about it the way that I am, is so that there is that feeling of he's swimming, he's in the water. And it also helps you to shift it from the photograph, and it helps you to understand a nice way to interpret a great photo and make it your own.
That's a cool technique.
I think it's going to be really nice. Thank you, Janine. I think it's going to be nice. I've done this before, and it gives it a nice feeling of belonging where he is. You know, he's in his element. I like that idea.
And like you said at the beginning, there's no real white, so you painted the undertone first.
The undertone first, right? And so by using our masking fluid on top of it, it's going to preserve that light color, and then we could very easily go darker. So yeah, it's sort of what I'm thinking here. That's exactly what I'm thinking. And I probably, and I'm okay with the fact that you didn't know where I was going with this, because honestly, a lot of times I don't know. I think about it. I dream about painting and how I'm going to best explain things to you and go about things in terms of presenting different ways to go about it and approach a painting. So of course, this could be done with anything that you're doing, anything that you want to blend into its environment. This is a great way to do it. And notice I'm just getting a little bit more scumbly and a little bit less defined as I sort of get to the bottom. I'm really holding on to the top. And, you know, I'm going to do a little bit on his back, but not a whole lot, because it's just not the same as the rest of him. So I am going to do some of these little marks, but mostly we're going to paint those. And then, oh, those wrinkles on his neck. Well, he didn't use any kind of skin tightener I could see. So his neck is showing his age. I think the rest we can really build. Okay. I feel that is a good amount of masking fluid. We want that to dry. We don't want to use our dryer on this. Oh, there's all kinds of gunk under my little cap here, so I'm just going to pull that out. So I'm going to pause and let you guys catch up. I'm not using my hair dryer on it because it will, I don't know what it's going to do to my overall painting, but that's, you can see I just did a little bit up there, mostly on his head, and on that flipper that's coming at us. And this also gives us a nice movement in terms of our, how we want the eye to view it. I'm just going to lift these up so this dries a little faster. Those little blobs that I got. And they could be your little air bubbles, who knows? So let me pause, you guys catch up. Okay, so my masking fluid is dry. The way you could tell, actually parts of it are still a little wet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work where it's dry, which is where I first started, which was this upper wing. So, you know, we want our paintings to have a timing to them. I'm going to switch to a number 10. This is, let me use my, my Georgia O'Keeffe pen, number 10 brush. I love this brush. I get them in most of the different museums that you go into, the stores have it. So what I want to do is I want to paint in here, and I want to go darker. And I know that you guys probably see a grayish brown color, as do I. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet the area that I want to have the wing in, the flipper, whatever it is. And I'm going to drop in my colors. And I'm going to drop in Dragon's Blood, which is an orange color, and let it just move, okay? Because I want it to be colorful. And you'll see that the masking fluid is pushing paint away where it's dry. And now to tone that down, I'm going to go in and add some, okay, orange complement is blue. So let's go ahead and add a little turquoisey blue color to it. And what's going to happen is it's going to mix itself on the paper, and it's going to dull each other out, and it's going to create a beautiful effect. And you'll see the orange and you'll still see the blue, but overall it has a visual effect of it looking toned down. And to blend it into the water, let me go a little closer with this. To blend it into the water, I've got a brush right now that has no color on it. I just dried it on my mat a little bit, and I'm going to touch it and let it bleed into, so that's a soft edge I just did there. And the reason why I do that is because I have a hard edge on the top. I think a nice soft edge, you don't need to have it definitive like the photograph. So that allows it to melt into the water that much more. So again, no water on no color on my brush and no water, and just tap it with a little bit of my brush, and it just allows it to move in ever so slightly, okay? This was the second part that I did here, so I'm going to go back in and I'm going to do that right now, which is the head. So I'm going to do it the same way. And I'm just going to add my water first. Now he does have an eye. It's a rather curious eye. It's a little creepy, but we could add our first tone to it, right? Now on his head, I don't want his head, I'm just going to give it the water all the way around and come up to the wrinkles on his neck a little bit, because I want to build those a little bit differently. I want to build those with rivers. I'm going to do the same thing I just did. I'm going to use my orange, Dragon's Blood, sorry. Well, that is orange. and back to my turquoise. And it will tone each other down. And we're preserving that beautiful light green that we put on the bottom. It's going to be there. It's going to be really nice. Okay. If it goes too blue, now look how toned that one, that flipper looks. That looks really good. I'm going to use a tissue just to stop that from moving so much. I'm pushing it back a little bit, just a little bit. So I just use my tissue just to stop the movement. We'll build the eye. You don't have to worry about all that. I'm just making sure these colors sort of mix nicely. If you need to go a little darker, add a little bit more color to them. Notice I'm not pre-mixing, I'm mixing right on the paper, which is a really fun way to paint. It's a lot looser and a lot less fussy. Okay, I'm going to come around. This is the darkest area right here. This right around this flipper is right here. That is, no question about it, where our most of our contrast is. So it's where that flipper comes into his neck. And then it sort of goes into that part of the other flipper, the one on the left. So this here is going to be our darkest dark. So what I want to do is I was just a little like dried up dragon's blood that I had there. That's all that really is. And let's go back in and add more color right there, right on that one little joint that he's got where his neck and the flipper is sort of talking right there. Switch colors. I'm going to go to my turquoise. Now I'm using my phthalo turquoise, and the reason being is that it's a much deeper color. You could use your blue phthalo. They're deeper, richer colors, and they're going to give me a much more intense, darker color. And I'm going to feather it out. Just going to let it go a little bit that way. And now this is where we want to do these rivers. And I'm going to switch to a rigger. And I'm just going to give these different, I'm just going to give it water right now. And I'm just pulling up all of that stuff that's kind of coming around his neck, all of those creases. And you'll see that as we add color down here, let me zoom in a little bit more for you. Okay, so as I'm adding color down here, these colors are just going to come right up if they stay wet enough. And so I'm just adding a lot of these ripples with my water and my rigger. And now I'm going to drop in more color right here. I'm releasing the color, and it's just going to travel right up into those rivers that we created. I'm going to drop in some blue now. Tilt my paper a little bit, and they're all traveling. If you didn't add enough of them, just go ahead and take your rigger and just build some more rivers. Those are rivers. And now I could just pull this out, and I could just build as many of these little areas as I feel like I want to. And you could come around that flipper where more wrinkles are right in here. Nothing here is perfect. That's what I love about it. It's just all kind of, your wrinkles will be different than my wrinkles, and that's okay. And it's different than his wrinkles, and who cares? As long as you get that feeling of it. And the thing about dropping color in, if it starts lightening up, drop some more color in. Just drop it in and let it move itself. That's the beauty about working this way, is that you're really letting the watercolors do the work for you. And that really is where most of the contrast is. So that's where we want to make sure we have a lot of contrast. And notice we just used 2 colors, but we have that nice grayed out kind of look, but yet it still holds on to a lot of color because we used color and we didn't overmix it. I'm going to go back to my number 10, and I'm just going to feather up a little bit some of this that color that's going into his back. Just want it to be a nice soft edge right there. And watch this. If you see that is drying too light, before it's completely dry, drop more color in. That's really the trick about getting contrast early on. So if I think it's, because we pulled it, it's going in different directions. If you need a little bit more, just drop it in and let it move itself. That's the real beauty about working this way, is that you're just letting the paints do the work for you. And of course, while we're doing all of that, this is all nice and dry here. So let me back out, take a peek. That's where we're at. Everybody with me? I really like what happened here. I think that those are 2 beautiful colors. So I'm going to continue with that dragon's blood and phthalo blue right in here. It doesn't have to be the same everywhere, but the way we're going to get around this is you could take your spray bottle and you could spray it if you could control it and keep it on the flipper, which I kind of did. If it goes off, it really doesn't matter, right? We're going to blend it into the water anyway, but it's nice and wet now. And I'm going to drop my color in, and I'm going to drop my color in a specific spot, not everywhere. I'm dropping it right there because I want it to be pulled by the water that's on your brush and on the paper. I think this making an interesting, and I think it's even more interesting than the turtle actually, which is pretty cool. And I'm just taking my brush and I'm just tapping it and letting it move a little bit. I like that. Oh, I really like the way that looks. It just kind of created some cool patterns. And I think that this is so much more fun than painting in between every little otchky-potchky little patch on his back, which of course you could do, but I think this is much more interesting and certainly a lot more fun. And
I'm all about fun.
What's that? What, Janine?
I'm all about fun.
Oh, yeah. Well, then we are having that. Yeah, I really like everything that I see happening. I switched to my phthalo turquoise just because it's different colors, right? And I'm just letting it do its own thing within the flipper. Are they flippers? Yeah, I think they're flippers. And again, you could take this and sort of let it just blend into your background. We don't have to have a definitive edge. So be conscious. Let me come back in a little bit. That's what that looks like. It's really textured and it's interesting and it's just got lots of good stuff going on that is giving me, if we stopped right now, you would know what it is. And I think anybody looking at something like this would say, boy, they really interpreted that in a beautiful way. And nobody's going to say, I don't know, it doesn't look like the turtle I saw, just dropping in. This is just me seeing the colors sort of fading a little bit, which does happen in watercolors. We know that that happens. So I just wanted to have a little bit more oomph. And I think that just did it. I'm not over moving it. I'm letting it sort of find its own ways around these areas. It does get a little blocked when you have that much masking fluid on it, but you could help it over those little masking fluid humps. And just because I love it so much, I'm dropping a little violet in. There's a little reddish violet. I think that just oomphed it a whole lot. Let me go in a little closer and show you what I did. I just dropped a little reddish violet in, which I think just made it really interesting. Of course, you know.
Sure did.
Me and violet. It's hard for me to resist not putting violet in a little. And I'm going to go back in actually where this darkest area is, right there. And I'm dropping a little violet in. I just feel like it. I'm just that kind of gal. Some really fun, interesting things are happening with that right there. Okay, I want to work on the back a little bit. This is all nice and dry here. This is while this is drying. So as not to disturb this, I'm going to just turn the paper a little bit so that my hand, do this the other way if you're a lefty, but I'm going to work here. And what I want to do is I want to have some of that texture. I don't really see like a whole lot of, you know, spots on his back. Actually, I could work right here. I could work straight. So, this is maybe a little greener and a little bit more violet-y on this back, which is, so I'm just going to add some of these colors into that back area. And you could leave little areas that are sort of open.
What color is that?
That's my greenish, the greenish yellow that I would mention before, my green gold.
Oh,
But you could use your Holbein if you have your leaf green. You could use any sort of color. Actually, if you wanted to use a little bit of undersea, that's probably like a pretty cool color to use. It's sort of a, and you could leave little spots of these, you know, the patterns that are on his back, on the shell, if you wanted to, without overdoing it, because I don't really see it that much there on his back. So let me go in a little closer, and you could see I'm just sort of giving it some patterns here, not a whole lot, not like on his flippers. And I do want to get a little bit of a violet in there. So, you know, pick a violet. I'm going for my cobalt bluish violet, which is a nice tone down. I feel like his back shell is a little bit calmer than these other spots, but we still want to introduce those colors into the area. A little orange. I'm going to add a little schmenky orange. I see that. And I think a lot of these patterns we're going to be able to develop just very, very wet into wet techniques. Little splatter. Take my toothbrush, give it a little bit of water splatter because it gives you a nice texture. Let me go closer. Take a look. It just splattered some nice water and gave me a really nice pattern. And depending on timing, everything like here is very much timing. So if you do it too soon, it will sort of dissipate. If you wait for a good time, it might just leave it with some really nice watery effects.
That's awesome.
Funny, Janine. She comes right on and makes those little comments. Little splatter. That's my turquoise. Not the phthalo turquoise, but that's my core turquoise, which is a nice color. And notice I did melt it into the water there. So timing, I'm sorry?
Lower the picture.
I'm sorry, let me go back out.
Thank you.
I'll unzoom a little bit on that other camera. So you could go ahead and you could definitely use a little toothbrush action to get some textures and colors and whatnot into there. And I'm still keeping an eye, by the way, in this one area here next to his neck. And I do see it sort of going a little lighter than I want, and it's still wet. So guess what? I'm going to just drop in a little bit more color right in there. If yours is too light, you can always go back in and drop more color in, because if it's wet, it'll continue to just move. So I do see that kind of happening there. Great colors in here. Is it as dark as I want it to be? Maybe, maybe not. I think I could always go back in and drop some more color in. But I don't really want to disturb what is going on there. So when you start with water, right, and you go in and you add color, the water mixes with the paint, helps it to move, but it also lightens the color. So you just need to be aware of that you're always monitoring the drying process and seeing if it's where you want it to be, or whether you want it to be a little bit richer, darker, whatever. You know, in a painting like this, it's a little less critical, but it's just something to know whenever you're going for a nice deep dark contrast. And I do want to build his back more, but I'm just going to let these colors sort of work their way around a little bit. I see all of my colors, you know, you guys know I choose my colors based on the color, or how it moves in water, or the colors that it breaks up into. That's pretty much my 3 criteria. Do I like the color? First and foremost. How does it move in water? Which is my Memories. Those move beautifully in water. Or a lot of my Daniel Smiths really come down to how they granulate and move and maybe turn into other colors. So I'm always choosing my colors based on those 3 criteria. Sometimes it's just a great color that I love to use. Now, I don't want to judge this too fast, because I think when we lift this masking fluid, it's probably going to be light enough. But you don't want to lift your masking fluid until the area is completely dry. So of course I want to move around and now check out his face and his eye a little bit. So let me zoom in and go in a little bit closer, getting better at this, Janine, without you here. And now I just want to build that eye a little bit. I don't want to use a black. I don't want to use anything that dark. I want to continue with my colorful expression. So his eye is sort of here, a little on the creepy side, but I'm using my violet.
You gotta move over, Jan. We can't see it. To the left.
Oh, there you are. Okay, thank you.
A little more.
Yeah, I'm right here. You can't, it's right here. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Try to keep my eyes on all these things, moving targets here. So just going a little bit darker. I don't have to, this is not a person, so it's not like I'm trying to have like a likeness or anything to it. And he's got those wrinkles around his eyes, which I think are interesting. I like them. Oh, somebody's talking out there. And I know they have that little crooked mouth. It's a little weird, but that's what they are. That's it. So I really want the focus to be here and not on his face. You may find that you want to build more around that. This is where we all just sort of kind of go in our own directions, and everybody gets to express it exactly how they want to. And I'm just making sure a lot of these areas are dark enough that when we lift our masking, it will be dark enough. Again, the amount of water that you use will affect how light it dries. I think that says enough eye for me for now. I may change my mind, but right now I think that's saying enough eye. Okay, I think this top wing, let me zoom out a little bit more. Oh, I went in, there you go, out, Jan, out. The best way to lift off rubber, the masking fluid is with a rubber cement pickup. And the reason why is because basically this is rubber cement, it's liquid rubber cement. And what you want to do is you just want to touch it and see if it lifts it up with a little bit of a burn, hitting it with a little bit of your, see how it's just kind of elastic, and I got a nice green underneath. That looks good. If it's not dry, don't attempt this. Make sure it's dry, because it'll just ruin the paper. And I got a very interesting pattern here. Run your finger on it, make sure that there's no more masking fluid on it. And then you have the option, right, with your small brush of going in and fixing any little areas that you may want to further define. So maybe I want this to be a little bit thinner here. And you get to go in and do all of these great little things. And that's how you focus on a certain area. You direct the viewer's eye. So I would say some of these got a little thicker than I would have liked. So I can just go in and paint around them a little bit. But nothing's really white. I have that beautiful color that we put on underneath it, which is really just great. Otherwise, how would we have done it? I think about these things. How else would I have done this without it being overly fussy? And see, I'm just going in ever so slightly, not on all of them, but on some of them, and just refining it a little bit. Maybe yours went on in a way that reads good for you, and so and you're happy with it. So that is something that we each get to sort of determine for ourselves. There we go. I think that looks good. I'm okay with that. Whether I go in and fuss with it a little bit more, it will be a whole other thing. Now, while this is all drying, just to keep us, moving, what I want to do is I want to hit this area under here with my number 10 brush and a little bit of my turquoise. I'm going to start right at his head, but then I'm going to feather up so that this really does go into and put his flipper and makes it feel like it is underwater. So this is now that I have the color on there, this is just a moist brush, giving just a little bit of color. And notice what's happening is that, I gotta zoom into this, you gotta see this, okay? You see how this just glazed that lighter area ever so slightly? Now to me, to my eye, that blue makes that flipper feel like it went underwater right here. Everybody see that? That's called glazing. And it's a really, really effective way to say that is back. Do I see it in the photo? No. But I know that that is a really great way to immerse him into it. And we're going to do it again, probably here on where the top of the his shell is, and probably along here a little bit. We'll see how we do with that. But I really want those areas. That was the critical area for me to really get his, it just feels like it's underwater now, which is exactly what I was going for. So I'm really happy that happened. Makes me so happy. Okay. Just feeling, now this is wet and this is wet. And this is still pretty wet. So I kind of don't want to disturb that yet. So I'm thinking while all of that is drying, this helps you also to stop from overworking a painting. Let's go into our coral rock reef sort of bottom and let all of that dry, and we'll just dig into another area. So this is my natural sponge. And at this point, guys, you could pretty much pick up any color that you have in your palette that we've been using, whether you want to go with a little bit of undersea green or a little cascade, and you can just build a little bit of your texture on the bottom. Now, I'm just going to get a blank piece of paper because I'm going to show you what I don't want you to do, which is this. You don't want a pattern, okay? So what it means is that you have to twist it and turn it and drag it and create an interesting pattern, okay? That's really important when you're using this. There's a tendency to want to give it a some kind of symmetry and some type of over pattern. So what you have to do is you just have to twist it a little bit.
Less repetition.
What's that?
Less repetition that way.
Yeah, exactly, you know, and build some of your texture in your rocks. And refer to your photo here because there are some nice areas that are nice and dark and other areas that are lighter. Dropping a little violet in now. And what this is really going to help us bridge the palette, right? With all the colors that we used in him. And maybe there's some coral coming up. You know, let's get some orange in there, some reddish orange coral. I don't know. Do I want it to be, you know, overly that? No, I just want the suggestion of it. So make these marks interesting. And, oh, that, okay, I'm liking what I'm seeing here. If you feel it gets a little too repetitive, take your brush and just melt some of the marks in. It'll help just interrupt the pattern just a little bit and melt it into the water, right? So maybe there's a current that's kind of coming through here that's just obliviating our vision for a little bit. And just, you don't like a mark you made? Oh, easy breezy, just a little water. Really makes it go away very nicely. But that's holding my interest now. And try different sponges because you're going to get a very different effect on a different sponge, on a different side or whatever. And it will give you a little bolder, a little sharper, a little crisper. Ah, yeah, there you go. And notice I'm just twisting my hand to make sure that I'm interrupting it a little bit. And don't get carried away. We could get carried away with this. I know we could. And it's fun too. But let's interpret it and make sure we get the whole painting to work. And make sure you come up to his little head a little bit, because you don't want it to be so obvious that it's just around him. You want it to be like it's behind him. Okay. Now I do want to add a little bit more blue. Well, I know I see it in the photo, that blue there, but I kind of don't mind it, what happened there. This is still damp, but his head kind of feels dry. So I'm timing everything, which is really such an important part of watercolors, is just the timing. Do a little splatter. Oh yeah, nice. I like that. This little violet splatter I'm doing here. It's undersea things. All right, I am going to attempt to lift the masking fluid off of his head and neck. Let's see what happens. And if my marks look a little too fat, we're going to go in and fix them the way we did there. Again, yours might be fine. You might like them. I'm not sure yet. I thought I put them on really thin. So, you know, just know that we all get these unexpected results sometimes that we just don't know. Okay, got a little thick there. So I'm going to go in with my brush and I'm going to take my colors and I'm just going to correct it a little bit. Let me go in closer. It's not terrible, but I think they could be a little bit more refined, some of them, not all of them. I don't have to do them all. This kind of was what I was hoping to avoid doing, believe it or not. But the fact that I have to do it is not a bad thing for you to see how to go about it. I just didn't want to be doing them all this way. That was not my goal. Same two colors. That's my dragon's blood and my turquoise. So you could see the importance of, when you want a nice delicate area, taking your time and putting your masking fluid on really thin, which I really thought I did. But I want it a little thinner, so no big deal. So you can always go in and make any kind of corrections. At this point, I have more paint than water on my brush, just to make sure that I hold on to a nice thick color. It's not going on too watery, because then that only means if it's too watery, you have to go back in and do it again, right? Because it's just going to dry too light. So, all right, I'm kind of happy with that now. And nice. Okay. This is still damp. This is still damp. So we built as much as I feel that we could right now. I'm going to use my hair dryer and I'm going to dry it. I'm going to pause and let you guys catch up a little bit. Ready? And what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to lift off this masking fluid here and see what that looks like. And this is kind of important area because, you know, that's the closest to us. So we want to make sure those shapes look good. And of course, we can always correct them, as I showed you, if for any reason we're unhappy with them. And I don't know if you saw, but I flipped it upside down so that I wasn't drawing the top part of the masking fluid. I was underneath it. I didn't really want to hit it with heat. Again, this won't lift off if it's still wet. It'll really kind of affect your paper, and your paint will smudge around and all kinds of things will happen. So you just want to make sure that it's dry to the touch. And you guys have been with me for a while, so you know I'm not crazy about masking fluid. And, you know, but I thought this would be a fun way to sort of get some initial marks down. Yeah, I kind of like the way this looks. This is like a little bit more contrast coming right at you. Okay, I'm good with that. You may find you want to tone it down, easy to tone down. Oh, just make sure you run your finger over, your hand over it to make sure it got all of the masking fluid up. That's the best way that I could tell, oh, there's a little piece there, there's a little piece there, there's a little blob there, whatever. It's like you don't always see it, but you could feel it, especially because this is a light blue color. I don't always see it. Okay. There's still a little hump to the paper, which tells me that it is definitely still has moisture in it. But what I want to do is I want to go up here to the top part. And what I want to do is I want to just give ourselves some little tortoise shapes. I sort of indicated some of them, but I want to go in and do a little bit more. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take, there's a edging here, right, that he has. So it's like right here might be a spot. I'm going to take that edge and feather it up. So I made a mark, and now I'm just carrying it up into a nice area. See how suggestive that is? It's just a nice light suggestion. So again, make a mark and now carry it around. This is a little less fussy area to concern ourselves with, so there's not as many marks on his back as there is in his flippers. But there are some, and we want to be able to just have some of those marks.
Jan, I just looked it up. In fact, the sea turtle does have flippers. Other turtles have legs.
Wow. Okay, Janine, thank you for that.
You got it right.
I got it right. I don't know what else we would have called them, you know, actually. So it made sense. I think it's like when I think you call, like, you know, fins maybe flippers, you know, but I think fins when we put the things we put on our feet when we're, you know, scuba diving or whatever. So now you could just go in and make some of these marks and finish the top of his little tortoise shell area, his back. And there's far less marks there that will give you a nice suggestive. And you don't have to put them all in. You just have to suggest that they're there. And if we stop right now, everybody would sort of know what we've got going on here. So how far you go with this, of course, always comes down to it being your style, your approach, your sense of how far do you want to go with this? How much do you want to do? That's always, always, always up to you guys. And that's what makes our styles different. And I'm just finding little areas just to sort of suggest the shell. because there's something else I want to do before we finish up. I want to glaze this a little bit darker on the bottom here. Remember I said I wanted it to feel like this part was underwater. So I'm going to take my bigger brush and I'm going to go into my turquoise again. I'm going to start in this corner right here. And I'm just going to glaze over, putting that directly under. See how that blue just makes it feel like it's just a little underwater. And that's just a little glaze technique, which I really like. This got a little thicker than I would like. So you might find these areas that you just have to go back in and make these little minor adjustments with. It is so spot on exactly what you should be doing at this point. Is exactly that. I'm going to glaze under here a little bit. Let that part of his flipper just go right into the water. Doesn't have to be everywhere, just spots. Just makes him integrated into the water. And of course I said I wanted to do it here. So by dropping my color in, now that it's wet, I could drop my color in. Oh, it's nice and deep and rich. That's nice. And just take my brush and tap it with a little bit of water that's on my brush and say, you can move in here. You could come into this area because there's a little moisture there for you to do so. Now this is where you start building a painting and you start saying, oh, well, I got that nice dark there. Where might else I like to have that? And so you might find other places that you like that type of intensity there. I certainly like it. And this is where you start understanding, like, where do I want my painting to go? How much more do I want to interpret this? How much darker do I want things to go? Do I want to fix certain marks that are going on? I like these ones being bigger and those being smaller because it's coming at me. I'm okay with that. You may want to change it. And this is just that flipper, that left flipper coming around. Oh, I like that. I like that. It got nice and dark right there. You know, where you put it one place, you don't have to do it every place. You can have lost and found edges. So let me zoom into that for a second. Important. I just added this edge right here. That's on his, like upper curved part of his flipper where it's going into his neck. But that's a found edge. And then next to it, I have lost edges. Lost and found edges is absolutely one of the top things in watercolor, is what edges do you want to find? And we could find every edge here that we want to. Which edges are you willing to lose? Which edges are you okay with losing? That's really a very big conversation. And it's one that helps you develop your style. What edges are you willing to lose? So I'm going to do something a little daring right now. And I'm going to sort of suggest some, with a glaze, some water. If you look at the photo, I kind of see this kind of top ripple thing happening. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to try to figure out how I'm going to do that. So I'm just going to come in here. It's almost like sunlight hitting him. I'm okay with that. What are you willing to try?
Definitely adds to it.
Yes, it does. Thank you. I agree. I feel like it does add to it. And I knew I wanted to do that. And yet, you know, you might be a little fearful of doing that. Notice I'm going right over his shell a little bit. But it's a nice little extra thing that you could do if you feel comfortable with it. It's almost saying there's light coming from the surface, which of course there would be. And I did lose some of that edge there that is just coming right in on his top of his back. So inviting some of those colors to break and come right in with a little bit of water. I am going to say for now, I feel done. I probably want to do a little bit more on his back, a little bit more texture, but you know how to do that. And we can always do that. And we can always create more. I probably will wait for this to dry and I will pencil some marks in and I'll paint some marks just so that they sort of match what's going on here. And the other thing I might do is I might go in and readjust some of these shapes in here just to make them a little bit more delicate in spots. So I'll probably go in and do some of things like this. Do I need to? Not really, but those are things that I might choose to do as it's drying and want to adjust and have it be a little bit more uniform. Okay. So guys, I want to have time for a critique. I'm going to stop recording. So what I did was I mixed a little bit of my white with a little bit of my green, and I got this little bit of a nice green light color. And now I could go in, and this is another way to work it, these shapes, instead of using masking fluid, if you prefer, you know, doing a whole wash here and then going back in, because if you use a heavy body white, what's going to happen is that it's going to pretty much go over your dark color. And you could add all of these shapes in. And now what's happening is that this is beginning to match this a little bit. So that's another way to work it. But I like the idea of using it to practice our masking fluid. It's a little bit, one of those things that really takes a little bit of practice, and it's a very good practice for those times you do want to use it to keep it light and delicate and whatnot. But all of these marks, I could go right in and suggest all of those shapes on his back, easy breezy. And those are the final finishing touches that you put onto your painting so that you feel it's complete. And of course, you could also go in and paint those individual sections like we did here also, just to have it, those two sections sort of match up. So if I wanted to, and you may want to, go back into your colors and you could find some of these other shapes and really go a little darker with some of them. And because they're larger, they're not going to be quite as fussy as the other ones that we did, right? And this way we're starting to blend now the shapes that we have going on to the top part, the top to the bottoms, to his fins and his head. Okay, I want to get back to critiquing you guys, but I just wanted to show you that on the recording.